putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Kevin Jackson here. I was just thinking, I love when if you ever think about the left and how they operate and you say to yourself, what's happening? What's interrupted their flow? So let me give you an example. The Podestas. I remember when all this stuff was hitting the fan and John Podesta was on TV and he looked like he was in the shank of the evening. You didn't, hey, this stuff is really, not good news, blah, blah, blah. Trump did this, that, and the other. And it was a business as usual interview on MSNBC or CNN. I was just flipping channels. It wasn't on Fox. I know that. And I didn't watch it. It was a clip of an interview. And he's trying to, do the party line. Everything's good to go. Well, then we found out that they did the Uranium One deal that we were never supposed to find out about. And so when I last heard of the Podestas, it was in October. I'm talking about visually saw them. It was in October of 2017, and they were knee deep in quicksand. But I haven't heard anything since. So we've got November, all of December. We're in the new year. 2 months, Clinton stuff floating around like crazy, and I haven't heard a thing. And I was wondering why not. If the two brothers are smart, they volunteered for witness protection so they wouldn't face the wrath of the Clintons. But what's ironic about this whole thing is one of the last times the Podestas were in the news had to do with John Podesta referencing a conspiracy to tie him to the Russians. Yeah, this is what The Hill wrote back in October of 2017. Former Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta said on Tuesday that he was the victim of a big lie campaign created by President Trump. Now, I'm going to stop there for a second. Donald Trump said that the Russians might be colluding with Hillary, and he said it, and he said, get their emails. And we got WikiLeaks emails that did showcase that Podesta had some conversations going, but Donald Trump said it because they had said something to him like, because remember, Trump said something along the lines of, I wouldn't mind working with Putin. There it is. He wants to work with the communists, the Russians, Putin. He's an evil player. Look at this. Look at what Donald Trump said. And they blew it out of proportion. This was around the September, October timeframe when the left started realizing we might not win. Go back and look at your timeline for this. Somewhere along the line, they said, just in case we don't win, we need an insurance policy. So they started tying Donald Trump to Russia just in mentioning it. He wants to get along with Putin. He and Putin are much the same. He admires Putin. And it was stories along those lines. You can go look them up. You don't need me to do that for you and read it to you. But that's what happened. Now, October of 2017, Trump's been in office now almost a year. It was on the 31st, I believe. Then John Podesta then says, they're setting me up, trying to tie me to the Russians. Let me tell you what he was doing. He was trying to run interference to say, I don't have anything to do with the Russians. Believe me, it's a setup, because he knew exactly the truth. He was doing something with the Russians. And I'll get to that in just a second. It says this was an actual tweet. Not bad enough that I was a victim of a massive cybercrime directed by the Russian president. Keep in mind, Barack Obama said the Russians couldn't do this, whatever we said. Supposedly, Hillary's server couldn't be hacked. That's what came out of the FBI testimony by Comey, or Hillary's testimony. My system hadn't been hacked. And now we find out, maybe it was. Then he says, I'm the victim of a big lie campaign by the American president because now the cake was hitting the fan. Sweet irony, folks. It appears that President Trump wants to know now, where's Podesta? And I'm reading this from Western Journalism. They said this. As Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into alleged Russian collusion of the 2016 election continues on, President Trump has one big question on his mind. Whatever happened to Podesta? They closed their firm. This is a tweet. An interview Trump did. They closed their firm. They left in disgrace. The whole thing. You've never heard anything. And this is an interview with the Times. He reiterated his stance that and this is Donald Trump saying Mueller's going to be okay. I think he'll be fair. Trump knows something about Mueller. I don't know what it is, but he knows something about him because he's giving him his leeway. But here's what he went on to say. He expressed curiosity and frustration because his question was, Podesta has escaped scrutiny since stepping down from the firm he founded. Now, let's remember what Podesta did. Because his activities mimicked those of the former campaign manager of Paul Manafort, which I was telling you guys this earlier. But he mimicked Manafort before Manafort was part of the Trump team. And in fact, Manafort is more closely tied to the Podestas, ergo the Clintons, than he is Trump in the area of the investigation that Mueller's looking into. Now, Politico points this out. Manafort had a long history of lobbying foreign entities. He led a public relations campaign for a nonprofit called the European Center for a Modern Ukraine. Similarly, the Podesta Group took part in promoting Ukraine in the United States, paid to do public relations work. So these two were hat in hand, working together, probably put a deal together. Now, I'll tell you this right now. I don't even care about that. If the government wants to do business with us, somebody's going to represent that government. If it's the Podesta Group or if it's the Trump Group, I don't really care. But what I do care about is when they try to plant a false narrative on Donald Trump and his team, when in fact it was these guys that were even more crooked than just trying to introduce Ukraine business interests into America and vice versa. These people were selling uranium to Russians, getting kickbacks of 7, 8, and 9 figures. Hillary Clinton's Clinton Foundation got $143 million. Podesta, they say, got $20 million. I don't know what Manafort got, but he didn't do it for his good health and good looks. So that's what bugs me. So when the Russian investigation hit the fan, suddenly the Podestas were making these unorthodox moves. And the next one came right before John Podesta said, they're going after me, this mean-spirited president, he's doing this. Then all of a sudden, Podesta decides, I'm stepping down. Here was a report from CNN. The biggest story yesterday, the one that has the Dems in a dither, is Podesta running from his firm, tweeted the President of the United States. What we know about crooked Dems is earth-shattering. He and his brother could drain the swamp, which would be yet another campaign promise fulfilled. Fake news week. That's what the president tweeted. And so CNN asked this question. What exactly is President Donald Trump talking about? Podesta? Wait, isn't this the guy who ran Hillary Clinton's campaign? Is this controversy as big a deal as Trump says it is? Start here. Tony Podesta, the guy with the lobbying firm, is the brother of John Podesta, who was chairman of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, chief of staff to then President Bill Clinton, and a major player in the Democrat political and policy circles for decades. As John rose through the ranks of the Democrat politics, Tony was following a similar ascent in the world of political influence, emerging as one of the most powerful Democrat lobbyists and biggest party donors in Washington. And not a peep from either Podesta since. That was November. We're talking October, early November, and nothing. There's been all of November, all of December. We're into the new year. Mueller hasn't said anything. Where are we here? Because I'd like to know. In the most recent piece that I could find, which was in November of 2017, the New York Times wrote this. And now, in a twist with Shakespearean undertones, the two influential Washington brothers have found themselves on opposite sides of the scandals over Russian interference in the 2016 election. John Podesta, more than anyone except Hillary Clinton, was a victim of the Russian cyber assault on allies of her presidential campaign, in which he was a chairman. Emails stolen from his personal Gmail were dribbled out by WikiLeaks last fall, revealing the embarrassing rifts roiling the campaign and Washington's Democratic establishment. And then he's pushed hard for an aggressive investigation of Russia's role in the election. And they go on to talk about his brother. But what I'm telling you is this. Even the New York Times understands something is amiss here. They can't figure it out. Mr. Mueller, they say, subpoenaed the firm and its employees for documents and testimonies related to their work and interviewed roughly half a dozen people about Tony's involvement. So one thing's certain, folks. It's going to be Center News 2018, and both these brothers are going to end up in prison.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.